A single phone call can change everything. When a terrified child dials a wrong number seeking help, she reaches a powerful CEO whose perfect life is about to shatter. What begins as a desperate plea becomes a journey of discovery, redemption, and unexpected love. Sometimes wrong numbers lead us exactly where we're meant to be. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and type love in the comments. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Great news awaits you. The rain fell softly through the canopy of Riverside Forest, each droplet catching what remained of the afternoon light. 6-year-old Aria held a massive elephant ear leaf above her head like an umbrella, her small arms trembling from the effort. Beside her, half buried in mud and covered by the cruel steel teeth of a hunting trap, her 3-year-old brother Tyler whimpered softly, his face streaked with tears and dirt. "It's okay, Tai-Tai," Aria whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm going to get help, I promise." They had been collecting leftover food from the restaurants near downtown Millbrook since morning. The backpack Aria carried, now soaked and heavy, contained bread ends, half-eaten sandwiches, and wilted vegetables, treasures that would feed them and Mama for 2 days. The forest path was their secret shortcut, saving them nearly an hour of walking. But today the rain had softened the earth and Tyler had stepped exactly where he shouldn't have. The trap had snapped shut around his small body with a sickening clang that still echoed in Aria's ears. Only his head remained free, his terrified blue eyes looking up at her with absolute trust. She had tried everything, pulling, digging with her bare hands, even using a stick as leverage. Nothing worked. The trap was designed for animals much larger, much stronger than a 6-year-old girl whose last proper meal had been 3 days ago. Aria's fingers fumbled in the plastic bag tied to her waist, searching for the ancient flip phone Mama had given her. "Only for emergencies, baby girl. Only if something really bad happens." Her mother's words echoed as Aria's trembling fingers found the device wrapped in layers of plastic bags to keep it dry. The phone screen flickered to life, displaying 2 contacts: Mama and Dr. Wilson, their neighbor who had helped when Tyler had pneumonia last winter. Aria's vision blurred with tears as she tried to press Mama, but her cold, wet fingers slipped. The call connected before she could correct her mistake. Harrison Blackwell. The voice that answered was deep, commanding, and clearly annoyed at the interruption. Aria's heart hammered. This wasn't Mama's gentle voice. But Tyler was crying harder now, his lips turning slightly blue in the cold rain. She didn't have time to hang up and redial. "Daddy," the word tumbled out, driven by some instinct she didn't understand. She had never met her father, didn't even know his name. But in that moment of absolute terror, she needed a daddy, any daddy. "My little brother is trapped. Please, we need help. We were just getting food and he fell and I can't get him out and it's raining and he's so scared and I don't know what to do." The words rushed out in one desperate breath before she dissolved into sobs. On the other end of the line, in the pristine corner office of Blackwell Industries on the 47th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, Harrison Blackwell froze mid-signature on a $50 million merger contract. The pen slipped from his fingers. He had heard many things in his 40 years: desperate pitches, angry shareholders, even death threats. But never had a child's voice pierced through his carefully constructed armor with such raw, terrifying sincerity. And that single word, "Daddy," hit him like a physical blow. "Wait," Harrison commanded, his business instincts taking over despite his confusion. "Where are you? What kind of trap?" "In the forest, the path from downtown to Riverside Heights," Aria sobbed. "It's a big metal thing with teeth. Tyler is stuck inside. Please hurry, Daddy. Please." Harrison's assistant, Margaret, appeared in the doorway with a stack of documents. She stopped short at the expression on her boss's face, something she had never seen in 15 years of working for him. Fear. Pure, unfiltered fear. "Call 911. Harrison barked at her, already grabbing his suit jacket. "Tell them a child is trapped in a hunting snare in Riverside Forest, the path connecting downtown Millbrook to Riverside Heights. Send emergency services now." "Sir, you have the board meeting and—" "Cancel everything." Harrison was already moving toward the door, his phone still pressed to his ear. "Sweetheart, I need you to stay very calm for me. What's your name?" "Aria," she whimpered. Aria Morgan. And my brother is Tyler. He's only 3, and he's so cold. And there's mud everywhere and… Aria, listen to me very carefully. Harrison's voice shifted, becoming gentle in a way it never had before. I'm coming to help you. But I need you to be my brave helper, okay? Tell me exactly where you are on that path. As his driver navigated the afternoon traffic with Harrison shouting directions, Aria described landmarks through her tears: a split oak tree, a cluster of white birch trees, a small stream. Harrison's mind raced, calculating distances, timing, and logistics with the same precision he applied to billion-dollar deals. But underneath the calculation was something else, something that made his hands shake as he gripped the phone. That voice. That terrified, brave little voice calling him Daddy, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I can see the split oak tree, Aria said, her voice small and exhausted. Tyler stopped crying. Is that bad? Daddy, is that bad? Harrison's blood ran cold. Shock could set in quickly, especially in a 3-year-old. Aria, I need you to talk to Tyler. Sing to him. Tell him stories. Keep him awake, okay? Can you do that for me? I'll sing him the rain song. Mama sings it when we're scared. Aria's voice wavered, but she started humming a melody that was achingly familiar, though Harrison couldn't place why. The helicopter his company kept for emergencies was faster, but there was nowhere to land in the dense forest. Harrison's driver, a former race car enthusiast, made the normally 40-minute drive in 23 minutes, breaking every traffic law in existence. Harrison barely noticed. He was too focused on the small voice in his ear, singing about raindrops and sunshine, about storms passing and better days coming. When they finally reached the forest entrance, Harrison didn't wait for the car to fully stop. He bolted into the trees, following the directions Aria had given. His $1,000 Italian leather shoes sank into the mud with each step. His custom suit jacket caught on branches. He didn't care. I can hear something. Aria's voice brightened with desperate hope. Are you close? Keep talking to me, sweetheart. I'm almost there. And then he saw them. Under the inadequate shelter of a giant leaf, a small girl with tangled blonde hair and enormous eyes crouched beside a hunting trap. Her clothes were worn and too thin for the weather, covered in mud and leaves. But it was her eyes that stopped Harrison's heart. Vivid green eyes, the exact shade of his own, a rare genetic marker that ran in his family. Eyes that had no business being in the face of a child calling a wrong number in the middle of a forest. The little boy in the trap had stopped crying, his small face pale and lips tinged blue. Harrison's emergency medical training from his Navy days kicked in instantly. Aria, you did perfectly, Harrison said gently, dropping to his knees beside them in the mud. Tyler is going to be fine. I promise you. He pressed his fingers to the boy's neck, finding a pulse, weak but steady. Relief flooded through him. The trap was a cruel device designed to hold without killing. Tyler's small body was compressed but not punctured, the one mercy in this nightmare. Harrison examined the mechanism with practiced efficiency, his mind cataloging what he needed. The sophisticated electronic lock required either the hunter's remote or brute force. Stand back, Aria, Harrison commanded softly. He removed his jacket, wrapped it around his hands, and gripped the trap's jaws. The metal bit into his palms even through the fabric as he pulled with every ounce of strength. His muscles screamed in protest. His vision blurred with effort. The trap didn't budge. Harrison's mind raced through options. He could hear sirens in the distance, emergency services responding to his call. But Tyler's breathing was becoming more shallow. They didn't have time to wait. Aria, in my pocket there's a phone. Call the first number, my driver James. Tell him to bring the crowbar from the trunk. Can you do that? Aria's small hands fumbled in his jacket pocket. She made the call with remarkable composure for a child who should have been falling apart. Harrison noticed the way she held herself. Protective, responsible, far too adult for 6 years old. It was a stance he recognized from his own childhood of survival. James appeared within minutes, carrying not just a crowbar but a full emergency toolkit. Together they leveraged the trap's mechanism. The metal groaned, resisted, then finally gave way with a shriek that sounded almost alive. Tyler slumped forward into Harrison's arms, his small body limp and cold. Harrison wrapped the boy in his jacket, rubbing his limbs to restore circulation as the paramedics crashed through the underbrush. "You found them." The lead paramedic, a woman named Chen, took over with professional efficiency. "Good work keeping him conscious, sir." "It wasn't me," Harrison said quietly, watching as they carefully examined Tyler. "It was his sister." Arya stood a few feet away, her leaf umbrella abandoned, her whole body shaking with exhaustion and delayed shock. The rain had stopped, leaving everything glistening and eerily quiet. Harrison moved to her side and did something he had never done in his entire corporate life. He knelt in the mud and opened his arms. Arya looked at him with those impossible green eyes, eyes that mirrored his own, and then she collapsed into his embrace, sobbing with the force of all her terror and relief. "You were so brave," Harrison whispered into her wet hair. "So incredibly brave, Arya." "Is Tyler going to be okay?" she asked against his chest. "Really okay?" "Really okay," Harrison confirmed, feeling her small heart racing against his ribs. "Thanks to you." The paramedics loaded Tyler onto a stretcher, his vital signs stabilizing under their care. Arya tried to follow, but Harrison gently held her back. "They need space to work, sweetheart. We'll follow them to the hospital." He paused, the question burning in his mind, finally forcing its way out. "Arya, who should we call? Your mother? Is there someone who needs to know you're safe?" Arya's expression crumpled. "Mama is working her night shift. She doesn't get off until midnight. We weren't supposed to be out this late, but we needed to get food, and the good restaurants throw out their bread before 6, and..." She trailed off, seeming to realize she was revealing too much. Harrison's chest tightened. Night shift, collecting thrown-out food, worn clothes, and a 6-year-old child responsible for a toddler. The picture forming in his mind was devastating in its clarity. "What's your mother's name?" Harrison asked gently. "Claire. Claire Morgan." Arya looked up at him with those haunting green eyes. "Do you know her? You sound familiar somehow." The name hit Harrison like a freight train. Claire. 7 years ago. A volunteer event at a children's hospital where his company had been donating. A woman with golden hair and a laugh that made him forget about board meetings and profit margins. One night where he had been just Harrison, not Harrison Blackwell, CEO. One night before he had married Victoria, before his life had become an endless series of contracts and appearances. One night he had convinced himself meant nothing, because it had to mean nothing. Harrison's hands started shaking as he looked at Arya, really looked at her. The curve of her chin, the stubborn set of her jaw, the way she stood like she was facing down the world despite being half drowned and terrified. His daughter. This was his daughter. The realization was too immense, too impossible, too perfectly right to be coincidence. But standing in the rain-soaked forest with emergency vehicles flashing through the trees and a little boy being loaded into an ambulance, Harrison couldn't process it. Wouldn't process it. "Let's get you both to the hospital," Harrison said, his voice rough with emotions he couldn't name. "And then we're going to find your mother and let her know her children are safe." "But you never said," Arya said, her small hand finding his as they walked toward the ambulance. "How did you get here so fast? How did you know exactly where to find us?" Harrison looked down at the child, his child, and felt something in his chest crack wide open, letting in light for the first time in years. "Because," he said softly, "when someone I care about is in trouble, nothing in this world can stop me from reaching them." Arya smiled then, a tiny, exhausted smile that transformed her whole face. "That's what a daddy does, right?" "Yes," Harrison whispered, his throat tight. "That's exactly what a daddy does." As they reached the ambulance and Harrison lifted Arya into the vehicle beside her sleeping brother, one thought dominated his mind. How was he going to tell his wife that the business dinner running late tonight wasn't a business dinner at all? It was the moment his entire carefully constructed life fell apart and rebuilt itself around 2 children he never knew existed. But first he had to find Claire Morgan and get answers to questions that were rewriting his entire past. Millbrook General Hospital's emergency room buzzed with its usual Thursday evening chaos. Industrial accident victims, a teenager with a skateboard injury, an elderly man with chest pains. Into this organized disorder came Harrison Blackwell, looking distinctly out of place in his mud-stained suit, carrying a 6-year-old girl who refused to let go of his hand. Tyler had been rushed into examination immediately. The doctors were cautiously optimistic: bruising, mild hypothermia, possible cracked ribs, but nothing life-threatening. Arya had been checked for injuries and found miraculously unharmed except for exhaustion and exposure to cold. Now she sat on an examination table, wrapped in blankets, her eyes fixed on the door where her brother had disappeared. "Miss Morgan, you need to eat something," Dr. Patricia Santos said gently, offering a tray of cafeteria food, soup, crackers, juice. "When was your last meal?" Arya's eyes flickered to Harrison, then away. "We had bread yesterday, the good kind with seeds." Dr. Santos's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Harrison saw her make a subtle note on her tablet. His stomach churned with implications he didn't want to acknowledge. "Arya," Harrison said carefully, pulling up a chair beside the examination table, "I need to ask you something important. Do you have a number where we can reach your mother? She needs to know what happened." "I only know her work number," Arya said quietly. "But we're not supposed to call unless someone is dying. Mama needs her job. The shelter said if she loses this one, they won't help us anymore." Shelter. The word landed in Harrison's chest like a stone. He thought of his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, of the vacation home in the Hamptons, of the yacht he had purchased last year and used exactly twice. He thought of all that wasted space while a 6-year-old girl knew the rules about emergency calls to homeless shelters. "What's the number? What's?" Harrison asked, his voice carefully neutral. Arya recited it from memory. Harrison stepped into the hallway and dialed, his heart pounding with an intensity usually reserved for hostile takeovers. The phone rang 4 times before a harried voice answered. "Riverside Diner, this is Claire." 7 years fell away in an instant. Harrison remembered that voice, warm and genuine, laughing over coffee at 2 a.m. after the hospital charity event, telling him about her dreams of becoming a teacher, her eyes bright with possibility. "Claire Morgan?" Harrison's voice came out rougher than he intended. A pause. "Yes? Who is this?" "My name is Harrison Blackwell. I'm calling about your children." The sound Claire made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. "Oh God. Oh God, what happened? Are they—" "They're safe," Harrison said quickly, hearing the pure terror in her voice. "Both of them are safe, but Tyler was injured. We're at Millbrook General Hospital. You need to come as soon as possible." "Injured? How? How bad? I'm working. My shift doesn't end until—" Claire's voice spiraled into panic. "Tyler fell into a hunting trap in Riverside Forest. He has some bruising and hypothermia, but the doctors say he'll be fine. Arya is unharmed. But Claire, they need their mother. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Tell them Mama's coming. Tell Arya to sing Tyler the Rain song. Tell them I love them more than anything." The line went dead. Harrison stood in the fluorescent-lit hospital corridor, his phone still pressed to his ear, and realized his hands were shaking. In 20 minutes he would see Claire again. In 20 minutes he would have to confront the possibility that he had a daughter he never knew existed. In 20 minutes, his life as he knew it would detonate. He should call Victoria. His wife of 6 years deserved to know where he was, why he had abandoned the board meeting that could have cost them millions. But every time he reached for his phone to dial her number, something stopped him. Some instinct that told him once he spoke the words aloud, once he involved Victoria in this, there would be no going back. "Mr. Blackwell?" Dr. Santos appeared beside him. "Arya is asking for you." He found the little girl curled up on the examination table, her eyes huge and frightened in the harsh lights. When she saw him, her face crumpled with relief. "They won't let me see Tyler," she whispered. "What if he's scared and I'm not there?" Harrison felt something in his chest shift and settle into a new configuration. "The doctors are making sure he's completely okay, but I promise you'll see him very soon." "You promise? Like really, truly promise?" "I really, truly promise." Harrison sat down beside her. "Arya, your mother is on her way. She'll be here in just a few minutes. She'll be so mad, Arya said softly. We weren't supposed to go to the forest, but the shortcut saves so much time and we can get more food if we don't waste time walking the long way and… She won't be mad, Harrison interrupted gently. She'll just be grateful you're both safe. Parents don't get mad about things like this. They get scared. And that fear sometimes looks like anger, but underneath it's all love. Arya considered this with a seriousness that seemed far too old for her years. Do you have children? The question blindsided him. No, I don't. Then how do you know about parent feelings? Harrison paused. How did he explain that he was learning about parent feelings in real time, that every instinct screaming at him to protect this child was brand new and overwhelming? I had a father once who got very scared when I was in danger. At the time I thought he was angry, but looking back I understand it was love. It was a lie. His father had been angry, cold, distant, demanding perfection. But Arya didn't need to hear about that particular childhood. I wish I had a daddy, Arya said quietly, not looking at him. Mama says my daddy didn't know about me, that if he had known, he would have wanted me. But sometimes I think maybe he did know and just didn't want us. The words were a knife between Harrison's ribs. He opened his mouth to respond, to tell her that any father would be lucky to know her, that she was brave and smart and perfect. But the moment shattered as a woman burst through the emergency room doors. Claire Morgan looked like she had aged a decade in 7 years. Her blonde hair, once vibrant, was pulled back in a severe ponytail. Her face was lined with exhaustion and stress. She wore the polyester uniform of a diner waitress, a mustard stain on one shoulder, sensible shoes worn thin at the heels. But her eyes, those eyes were exactly as Harrison remembered them. Blue-gray like storm clouds, full of depth and intelligence that a uniform and tired face couldn't diminish. Arya! Claire's voice cracked as she saw her daughter. She crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled the little girl into her arms, shaking with sobs. Oh my baby, are you okay? Where's Tyler? Where's my boy? He's with the doctors, Mama. They're making him better. Arya clung to her mother. I'm sorry we went through the forest. I'm sorry I couldn't get him out by myself. I tried so hard, Mama. I tried. Shh. No apologies. You did everything right. You saved your brother. Claire pulled back, cupping Arya's face in her hands, checking her over with a mother's practiced eye. Then her gaze lifted, landing on Harrison standing a few feet away. The recognition was instant and devastating. All color drained from Claire's face. Harrison? The name came out as barely a whisper. Hello, Claire. They stared at each other across the examination room while Arya looked between them with growing confusion. The air felt thick with 7 years of silence, of choices made and unmade, of a single night that had apparently changed everything. You two know each other? Arya asked, her voice small and uncertain. Claire's eyes never left Harrison's face. We met once. A long time ago. Mrs. Morgan? Dr. Santos appeared in the doorway. Your son is awake and asking for you. Claire's attention snapped back to her children. Take me to him, please. As they followed the doctor down the corridor, Harrison trailing behind, Arya slipped her hand into his. The gesture was unconscious, natural, as if she had been holding his hand all her life. Claire glanced back and saw it, her expression flickering with something Harrison couldn't read. Fear, hope, regret. Tyler looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, his body nearly lost under blankets and monitoring equipment. But his eyes were open and aware, and when he saw his mother and sister, he smiled weakly. Mama, he whispered. Arya saved me. I know, baby, I know. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, carefully gathering him close. You're both so brave. So incredibly brave. Dr. Santos reviewed Tyler's condition. Bruised ribs, mild hypothermia, some tissue damage from the trap's pressure, but all things that would heal with time and rest. They wanted to keep him overnight for observation, but barring complications, he could go home tomorrow. Home, Claire repeated, and Harrison heard the weight of that word. Heard all it didn't mean: security, warmth, stability. Yes, thank you, doctor. I'll give you some time with your children, Dr. Santos said gently. Then to Harrison, Mr. Blackwell, could I speak with you privately? In the hallway, Doctor. Santos crossed her arms and gave Harrison a look that told him exactly how much she had pieced together. Those children show signs of chronic malnutrition, not severe but persistent, the kind that comes from sustained food insecurity. Harrison's jaw tightened. I suspected as much. I'm required by law to report this to Child Protective Services. Dr. Santos. However, she continued, before I make that call, I want to understand the full situation. That mother in there loves her children desperately. She's not neglectful, she's desperate, there's a difference. She paused, studying him. Aria called you Daddy in the ambulance, more than once. Harrison's carefully constructed composure cracked. It was a wrong number. She was trying to call her mother, and somehow my number came up instead. Somehow, Dr. Santos repeated, her tone suggesting she didn't believe in coincidences. Mr. Blackwell, I've been a pediatrician for 23 years. I've seen a lot of family situations, and I'm seeing one right now that's about to get very complicated. What are you saying? I'm saying that in approximately 15 minutes, Claire Morgan is going to walk out of that room and you two are going to have a conversation that will change lives. Multiple lives. Before that happens, I need to know if you're going to help those children or hurt them. Harrison thought of Tyler's blue lips, of Aria's worn clothes and 2 adult responsibilities, of Claire's haunted eyes. He thought of his penthouse and his yacht and his wife who collected art but couldn't stand children. He thought of the board meeting he had abandoned without a second thought. I'm going to help them, Harrison said quietly. Whatever that takes. Dr. Santos nodded slowly. Then I'll delay my call to CPS for 24 hours. That gives you time to figure out how to help without making things worse. She turned to walk away, then paused. For what it's worth, Mr. Blackwell, that little girl has your eyes, exactly your eyes. Harrison stood alone in the hallway, his world tilting on its axis. Through the window of Tyler's room, he watched Claire hold both her children, the 3 of them forming a tight unit of survival and love that had somehow endured despite everything working against them. 7 years ago, he had walked away from Claire Morgan after one perfect night, convincing himself it was the responsible thing to do. He had a company to run, a reputation to maintain, a life that didn't have room for complications like falling in love with a volunteer coordinator who made him laugh. 6 years ago, he had married Victoria. Brilliant, sophisticated, connected Victoria, who fit perfectly into his world of galas and board meetings and power. Their marriage was polite, professional, and utterly devoid of the warmth he remembered from a single night with Claire. And now, standing in a hospital corridor with mud still on his shoes and a little girl's handprint on his heart, Harrison realized he had made the wrong choice. Possibly the worst choice of his life. The door to Tyler's room opened, and Claire emerged. She looked 10 years older than she had 15 minutes ago, her face gray with exhaustion and something else. Dread, perhaps, or acceptance of an inevitable reckoning. Aria is reading to Tyler, Claire said quietly. They'll be fine for a few minutes. She looked up at Harrison, and in her eyes he saw all the questions neither of them wanted to ask. There's a waiting room at the end of the hall. We should talk. Yes, Harrison said. We should. As they walked together toward that conversation, toward truth and consequences and impossible choices, Harrison felt the last pieces of his old life sliding away. By the time the sun rose tomorrow, nothing would be the same. Not his marriage, not his understanding of his past, not his vision of his future. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with another call from Victoria. Harrison silenced it without looking. Some conversations couldn't wait, and some couldn't be rushed. This was both. The hospital waiting room was empty except for a vending machine humming in the corner and 2 rows of uncomfortable plastic chairs. Rain had started again outside, drumming against windows that looked out onto the parking lot where Harrison's town car sat beside Claire's ancient, rust-spotted sedan. They stood on opposite sides of the room, neither seeming to know how to begin. She has your eyes, Claire said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I told myself I was imagining it, that lots of people have green eyes, but they're exactly like yours. Harrison's hands clenched at his sides. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That the successful businessman I spent one night with, whose last name I didn't even know until I saw you on a magazine cover 6 months later, announcing your engagement, had gotten me pregnant? Claire's voice was sharp, with old pain. You had moved on, Harrison. You had a whole life I wasn't part of. I wasn't going to trap you with a child you never asked for. That wasn't your choice to make. The words came out harsher than Harrison intended, echoing off the sterile walls. He took a breath, forcing himself to calm down. I had a right to know I had a daughter, and I had a right to raise my child without disrupting your perfect life. Claire moved to the window, her reflection ghostly in the rain-streaked glass. Do you have any idea what it's been like? Watching you in business magazines, on the news, building your empire? Knowing that Arya came from one night with a man who couldn't even remember to exchange phone numbers? I remembered. The admission came out raw. Every detail of that night, your laugh, the way you talked about changing children's lives through teaching, how you made me feel like I was more than just a bank account with a pulse. Harrison's voice softened. I thought about calling you 100 times, but then I met Victoria, and my father was pushing the merger, and it was easier to forget. Claire turned to face him. I understand, Harrison. I do. You had responsibilities, a company, a life. I was just a moment. You were never just anything, Harrison said quietly. But I was a coward. I chose the easy path, the expected path. And apparently I've been paying for that choice without even knowing it. Silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of years and regrets. She's brilliant, Claire said suddenly. Arya. She reads at a 4th grade level. She can do math problems I struggle with. She taught herself to tell time when she was 4 because I was always late picking her up from daycare. A sad smile crossed Claire's face. She reminds me of you, not just the eyes, the way her mind works, how she solves problems. Harrison felt something crack in his chest. What happened, Claire? How did you end up? He gestured vaguely, trying to find words that didn't sound like accusations. Homeless? Claire supplied the word he couldn't say. It's a short story, really. I was going to grad school when I got pregnant. Had to drop out. My parents, they didn't handle it well. Religious family. Daughter pregnant by a man they never met who couldn't be bothered to call. I was cut off. She said it matter-of-factly, but Harrison heard the pain underneath. I worked 3 jobs while pregnant. After Arya was born, I was down to 2 because childcare cost more than I made at the 3rd. Then Tyler came along, different father, another mistake, and the math just stopped working. Rent or food, utilities or diapers. Eventually, I couldn't do any of it. Claire's voice stayed steady, but her hands trembled. The shelter system it's survival. We've been in 3 different places in 2 years. Arya and Tyler have learned not to get attached to anything because we might have to leave it behind. Harrison thought of his walk-in closet that was larger than most studio apartments, of the charity galas he attended where single plates of food cost more than what Claire probably spent on groceries in a month, of all the wealth he had accumulated while his daughter, learned not to get attached to things because poverty taught her that nothing was permanent. I want to help, Harrison said. Let me help. Claire's laugh was bitter. Help how, Harrison? Write a check? Ease your conscience? And then what happens when you go back to your life and we're still here surviving? That's not... You're wearing a wedding ring. Claire's eyes fixed on the platinum band Harrison had forgotten he was wearing. Does your wife know you're here? The question was a knife between his ribs. No. Does she know about Arya? No. Will you tell her? Harrison opened his mouth and found he had no answer. Victoria's face flashed through his mind. Beautiful, polished Victoria, who had made it clear before their marriage that children weren't part of her life plan, who viewed his business as their shared empire, and couldn't understand why Harrison occasionally wanted to do something that didn't have a profit margin. How did he explain to a woman who had never wanted children that he apparently had 2 of them? I don't know, Harrison admitted. This is all happening so fast. 6 hours ago I was signing a merger contract. Now I'm standing here discovering I have a 6-year-old daughter and... He stopped, the reality of it slamming into him again. God, Claire, I have a daughter. We have a daughter. And a son, Claire said quietly. Harrison's head snapped up. What? Tyler. Claire's voice was steady, but her eyes glittered with unshed tears. You asked how Tyler came along. Different father, I said. That was a lie. She took a breath. It was 2 years after Aria was born. I saw you again, at a fundraiser at the Children's Museum where I was working part-time. You didn't remember me. There were hundreds of people there. But I remembered you. And when you smiled at me across the room, when you looked at me like I mattered. She trailed off. I told myself it was closure. One more night to prove that what I remembered was just fantasy. That you were just a man, nothing special. Harrison felt like the ground was dissolving beneath his feet. Tyler is mine. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks later. By then you'd married Victoria. The wedding was in all the papers. The business merger of the decade, they called it. His father's company combined with yours. A dynasty built on a marriage. Claire's voice hardened. I wasn't going to be the poor woman with 2 kids disrupting your perfect life. So yes, I lied. I said Tyler had a different father. I told myself it was protecting everyone. Protecting everyone, Harrison repeated, his voice hollow. While my children were homeless. While they collected discarded food from dumpsters. While my 6-year-old daughter tried to free her brother from a hunting trap with her bare hands. Don't you dare judge me. Claire's composure finally shattered. I did the best I could with what I had. I kept them fed. I kept them safe. I taught them to read and do math and be kind to others even when the world wasn't kind to them. I loved them with everything I had, which was more than you ever did because you didn't even know they existed. Her voice echoed off the walls. Down the hall, a nurse looked up, concerned. Harrison took a breath, forcing himself to calm down. Fighting wouldn't help anyone, least of all the 2 children who needed them both. You're right. I'm sorry. I have no right to judge your choices when I wasn't here to make any. Claire wiped at her eyes angrily. What do you want, Harrison? Really? Because if this is guilt driving you to play hero for a day before you go back to your penthouse and your important meetings, then I'd rather you just leave now. Aria already called you daddy like it was the most natural thing in the world. Tyler keeps asking if you're going to come back. I can't let them hope for something that isn't real. I want to be their father, Harrison said, the words coming out with absolute certainty. I want to know them. I want to be part of their lives. He struggled for the right words. I want to fix this, all of this. You can't fix 7 years of absence with good intentions. Then let me start with today. Tomorrow. Let me try. Harrison moved closer, close enough to see the exhaustion etched into every line of Claire's face. You've been fighting alone for too long. Let me help carry the weight. And your wife? The question hung between them, complicated and terrible. I don't know, Harrison admitted. Victoria and I, our marriage is more partnership than passion. But she's still my wife. I owe her honesty about this. Honesty. Claire's voice was flat. You're going to tell your wife that you have 2 children with another woman, and you think she'll just what, accept it? Welcome Aria and Tyler into your life? I don't know, Harrison repeated. But I know I can't walk away from this, from them, from you, from me. Claire's eyes widened. Harrison hadn't meant to say that last part. But now that the words were out, he couldn't take them back, didn't want to take them back. 7 years ago, I made the wrong choice, Harrison said quietly. I chose obligation over love, security over possibility. I convinced myself it was mature, responsible. But seeing you again, meeting our children, God, our children, Claire, I realize I've been living half a life, going through the motions of success while missing everything that actually matters. Don't. Claire's voice broke. Don't say things like that, not now, not when I've spent 7 years telling myself you were better off without us. That we were just a mistake you never had to know about. You were never a mistake. Harrison reached out, then stopped, his hand hovering between them. Those children in there, reading to each other in a hospital room, they're the best thing I've never known I had. And if I could go back 7 years and change everything, I would. But I can't. All I can do is start from here, from now. and try to be the father they deserve. Claire stared at him, tears streaming down her face. It's too late, Harrison. Even if you mean all of this, even if you really want to try, your life doesn't have room for us. And I won't let Arya and Tyler be the secret you keep hidden because we don't fit into your world. Then I'll change my world. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Harrison's voice was steel wrapped in determination. I've spent 6 years building an empire I don't care about, married to a woman I respect but don't love, working 100-hour weeks for achievements that mean nothing when I go home to an empty apartment. I've been so focused on winning that I never asked what I was actually winning for. He paused. Those children are mine, Claire. And I've already lost 6 years of Arya's life and 3 years of Tyler's. I'm not losing another day. It's not that simple. It is that simple. Harrison finally closed the distance between them, his hands gentle on Claire's shoulders. It's the simplest thing I've ever decided. Everything else is just logistics. And logistics is what I do best. Claire searched his face, looking for doubt or hesitation. Harrison held her gaze steadily, letting her see the truth there. They're going to break your heart, Claire whispered. Children do that. They make you feel everything: hope, fear, joy, terror, sometimes all at once. Your carefully controlled life will explode into chaos and sticky hands and 3 a.m. nightmares and questions you don't know how to answer. Are you ready for that? Harrison thought of Arya's small hand in his, of Tyler's weak smile, of the way his whole world had shifted the moment he heard a terrified child call him Daddy. No, Harrison admitted. I'm not ready, but I'm doing it anyway. Something in Claire's expression softened. You really mean this? I really mean this. Your wife will be told the truth. Tonight, tomorrow at the latest. Harrison's jaw set. This is going to be complicated and messy and probably painful, but I'm not running from it. And us? Claire's voice was barely audible. This isn't just about the children. What you said about choosing wrong is the truth, Harrison finished. But that's something we figure out later. Right now, Arya and Tyler need parents who can work together. Can you do that? Can you let me in? Claire closed her eyes, and Harrison saw the moment she made her choice. Years of fighting alone, of desperate strength and quiet survival, were written in the lines of her face. But underneath was something else. A flicker of hope, dangerous, and terrifying, and real. Okay, Claire said finally. Okay, we'll try. For them. For them, Harrison agreed. They stood together in the empty waiting room, the rain drumming against windows, two people whose lives had just irrevocably tangled back together. Neither noticed Dr. Ike. Santos standing in the doorway, watching with the knowing expression of someone who had seen this kind of moment before. The moment before everything changed. Down the hall, in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and hope, Arya finished reading her brother the story about a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Tyler was asleep now, his breathing even and peaceful. Arya carefully set down the book and walked to the window. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky. But the storm was moving away, leaving clear air behind. Daddy came, Arya whispered to her reflection. I knew he would. She didn't know yet how right she was. Didn't know that the man who had rescued them from the forest was about to turn their entire world upside down. Didn't know about the fights and complications and heartbreak that was coming. But she knew, with the certainty that only children possess, that something fundamental had shifted. That the man with eyes like hers had promised to help, and somehow that promise felt like bedrock in a world that had been nothing but shifting sand. Tomorrow, everything would get more complicated. But tonight, for the first time in years, Arya fell asleep, feeling safe. Harrison's penthouse overlooked Central Park from the 48th floor, a glass and steel monument to success that had never felt like home. Tonight, at 11:47 p.m., with city lights glittering below like fallen stars, it felt more like a cage than ever before. Victoria Blackwell sat in the living room, a glass of wine in one hand and her tablet in the other, scrolling through market reports with the focused intensity she brought to everything. She looked up when Harrison entered, her expression cool and assessing. "You missed the board meeting," she said without preamble. Patterson was furious. The merger could have fallen apart. "I had an emergency." Harrison set his briefcase down, still in his mud-stained suit. He hadn't gone home to change, had come straight from the hospital once Arya and Tyler were settled for the night. Victoria's eyes swept over his appearance, taking in the dirt, the wrinkled fabric, the exhaustion carved into his face. What kind of emergency involves rolling in mud? The kind that changes everything. Harrison moved to the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, then downed it in one swallow. Liquid courage, he was going to need it. "We need to talk." That sounds ominous. Victoria set down her tablet, her attention fully focused now. After 6 years of marriage, she knew him well enough to recognize when something serious was coming. What happened? Harrison had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times on the drive home. Planned how to break the news gently, logically, with minimal damage. But standing in his sterile living room with his wife's calculating eyes on him, all those careful plans evaporated. "I have 2 children," Harrison said. "A daughter who's 6 and a son who's 3. I found out today." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. She simply stared at him as if he'd started speaking a foreign language. "You what?" Her voice was dangerously quiet. 7 years ago, before we met, I had a relationship with a woman named Claire Morgan. It was brief, 2 nights total, years apart. I didn't know she got pregnant either time. Today her daughter called me by accident when her brother was trapped in a hunting snare. I rescued them and took them to the hospital. That's when I found out the truth. Harrison forced himself to hold Victoria's gaze. "I had DNA testing done this afternoon. Preliminary results came through 2 hours ago. The geneticist said the genetic markers are unmistakable. They're mine, Victoria. Full confirmation will take 24 hours. But there's no doubt." Victoria stood up slowly. Her wine glass gripped so tightly her knuckles went white. "You're telling me that while we've been married for 6 years, you've had 2 illegitimate children out there that you knew nothing about? I know how this sounds. Do you?" Victoria's voice climbed in pitch, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "Do you have any idea what this means for us, for the company, for our reputation?" She slammed the wine glass down so hard it shattered, red wine spreading across the white marble like blood. "Harrison, we built everything together, everything. And now you're telling me there's some woman with your children living God knows where, doing God knows what?" "They're homeless," Harrison said quietly. "Claire and the kids have been in shelters for 2 years. The children were collecting discarded food from restaurant dumpsters when the accident happened." Victoria's face cycled through emotions: shock, disgust, calculation, and finally rage. "This is a disaster. An absolute disaster. The media will crucify us. Our shareholders will panic. Every business deal we've made will be questioned." She whirled on him, her eyes blazing. "And you expect me to just accept this? To welcome these people into our lives?" "They're not these people. They're my children. Children you didn't know existed until today." Victoria's voice rose to a shout. "We had an agreement, Harrison. No children, ever. I was very clear about that before we married. My career, our empire. Children would destroy all of it. And you agreed." "I did agree," Harrison said heavily. "And if I'd known about Arya and Tyler, I would have told you before we married. Given you the choice to walk away, but I didn't know, and now I do. And everything's changed." "Nothing has changed." Victoria grabbed her phone, her hands shaking. "I'm calling Richard. We'll contain this before it explodes. Pay the mother off. Generously, quietly. Set up a trust fund for the children. Child support, medical expenses, education, whatever she wants. But Harrison, we cannot let this become public. Do you understand? We cannot. I'm not paying Claire off." Harrison's voice was steel. "And this isn't about containment or damage control." "Then what is it about?" Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. "It's about being a father to my children." The words hung in the air between them. Victoria stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "You're going to throw away everything we've built, our marriage, our company's reputation, our social standing, for children you met today?" Her voice dripped with disbelief. "Children who've survived this long without you?" They survived, Harrison said quietly, but they shouldn't have had to. Claire has been working 3 jobs to keep them fed. Arya, at 6 years old, was responsible for a 3-year-old because there was no other choice. They collect thrown-out food because buying it isn't an option. Tyler was trapped in a hunting snare for over an hour before I could free him. Survived, Victoria? They've been barely surviving while I slept in a penthouse and bought yachts I never use. That's not your fault. You didn't know. But I know now. Harrison's composure finally broke. I know now, and I can't unknow it. I can't see my daughter's eyes, the exact same shade as mine, and pretend she's not my responsibility. I can't watch my son struggle to breathe from hypothermia and walk away because it's inconvenient. Victoria's expression hardened. So you're choosing them over me? I'm choosing to be the person I should have been all along. Harrison took a breath, forcing calm back into his voice. Victoria, we both know this marriage has been more partnership than passion. We work well together, we respect each other, but we've never been in love. Love is a fairy tale. Victoria shot back. What we have is better. Stability, mutual benefit, shared goals. And no joy, Harrison said softly. No laughter, no warmth. We're business partners who happen to share a bed occasionally. Is that really what you want for the rest of your life? Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. Something flickered in her expression. Was it relief? Uncertainty? What I want, she said carefully, is control over my life, predictability, success. Children represent chaos, emotional vulnerability, a loss of autonomy I'm not willing to accept. I know, and I'm not asking you to accept it. Harrison moved closer. I'm telling you that I can't be the man you married anymore. Those children changed me in a matter of hours, and I won't, go back. Victoria studied him for a long moment, her brilliant mind clearly working through scenarios and outcomes. When she spoke again, her voice was colder, more calculated. If you do this, if you publicly claim these children, I will make sure everyone knows. Every tabloid, every business journal, every society page. I'll control the narrative, Harrison. You'll be the reckless CEO who abandoned his responsibilities for a moment of sentimentality. Your company will suffer. Your reputation will be destroyed. Harrison felt ice slip down his spine. This was the Victoria he'd forgotten existed, the ruthless strategist who had built her consulting empire by crushing anyone who stood in her way. Is that a threat? He asked quietly. It's a reality. Victoria's eyes glittered. I've spent 6 years building our image as the perfect power couple. I won't let you demolish it without consequences. Either you contain this situation, pay off the mother, keep the children secret, maintain our public image, or I will burn your reputation to the ground on my way out. The room fell silent except for the hum of the city far below. Harrison thought about Arya's small hand in his, about Tyler's terrified blue eyes, about Claire's exhausted face and the 7 years she'd spent surviving alone. He thought about the man he'd been this morning, calculating, cold, measuring everything in profit margins and quarterly reports. That man would have negotiated, would have found a way to satisfy Victoria while maintaining his comfortable life, would have chosen reputation over relationship. But that man had died the moment a 6-year-old girl called him daddy, and meant it. Do your worst, Harrison said calmly. Burn it all down if you want, but I'm not hiding my children. Not for you, not for the company, not for anyone. Victoria's mask finally cracked. You're serious. You're actually willing to lose everything. I'm willing to lose everything that doesn't matter, Harrison corrected. And it turns out, most of what I thought mattered doesn't. For the first time since he'd known her, Victoria looked genuinely shaken. She sank back into her chair, her perfect posture finally collapsing. I don't understand you, she whispered. How can you throw away 6 years for people you don't even know? Because they're mine, Harrison said simply, and because the alternative is living the rest of my life knowing I chose comfort over being the father they deserve. Victoria was silent for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, something had shifted in her expression. Resignation, perhaps, or acceptance. I won't destroy you, she said finally, her voice drained of emotion. Not because I'm feeling merciful, but because you're right. This marriage has been a business arrangement that benefited us both. It served its purpose. She stood, smoothing down her dress with mechanical precision. I'll call my attorney in the morning. The divorce will be clean, quiet, and equitable. I'll take my share of our assets and build something new. You can have your Sudden family. Victoria, don't. She held up a hand. Don't apologize. Don't try to make this easier. We both got what we needed from this marriage for a while. Now we don't. It's just business, Harrison. The only kind of relationship we ever really had. She moved toward the bedroom, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope they make you happy. I hope all this emotional chaos you're walking into is worth what you're giving up. I truly do. Thank you, Harrison said quietly. Victoria nodded once, then disappeared into the guest bedroom, closing the door with a soft click. Harrison stood alone in his penthouse, surrounded by shattered glass and spilled wine and the ruins of his carefully ordered life. He should feel devastated. His marriage was ending, his reputation was at risk, his comfortable existence was dissolving. Instead, he felt like he could breathe for the first time in years. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Tyler is resting comfortably. Arya finally fell asleep around midnight. Thank you for everything today. I still don't know what to think about all this, but thank you. Harrison typed back. Can I come see them tomorrow morning? Bring breakfast? The reply came after a long pause. They'd like that. Room 347. Harrison set down his phone and walked to the window. Somewhere in the city, his children were sleeping. His children. The reality still felt impossible, yet more true than anything else in his existence. Tomorrow, he would start building a new life. Tonight, he let himself feel the weight of everything changing. And underneath the fear and uncertainty was something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Harrison arrived at Millbrook General Hospital at 7:15 a.m. with enough food to feed a small army. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, orange juice, coffee for Claire, and chocolate milk for the kids. The cafeteria staff had looked at him strangely when he ordered such a large breakfast to go, but Harrison was past caring about appearances. Room 347 was quiet when he arrived. Through the small window in the door, he could see Tyler asleep in the hospital bed, his small chest rising and falling steadily. Claire dozed in a chair beside him, her head at an awkward angle that would leave her neck aching. And in the other chair, Arya sat wide awake, reading a book that was clearly several grade levels above her age. Harrison knocked softly. Arya looked up, and her face transformed with pure joy. "Daddy!" She scrambled out of the chair and ran to the door, nearly colliding with Harrison as he entered. "You came back. I knew you would, but Tyler said maybe you wouldn't, but I knew." The word daddy hit Harrison like a physical force. He set down the bags of food and knelt to Arya's level, this fierce little girl who had decided he belonged to her with the certainty only children possessed. "I promised I'd come back," Harrison said gently. "And I always keep my promises. Even really truly promises." Arya's green eyes, his eyes, searched his face. "Especially really truly promises." Harrison pulled her into a hug, feeling her small body relax against him. She smelled like hospital soap and something sweet. Maybe the juice they'd given her last night. "How's your brother?" "He's better. The doctor said the bruises will heal and his ribs only need rest. But he has to stay in bed for a while, which will make him grumpy because Tyler doesn't like being still." Arya pulled back, her expression suddenly worried. "Are you really our daddy? Mama said we'd talk about it when Tyler woke up, but I want to know now. Please." Claire had woken up at Arya's shout. She stood slowly, wincing as she stretched her cramped muscles, her eyes wary as they met Harrison's. "Why don't we let your mama have some coffee first?" Harrison suggested to Arya. "And you can help me set up breakfast. I brought chocolate milk." "Chocolate milk?" Arya's eyes went wide. "Tyler loves chocolate milk. Can I wake him up?" "Gently," Claire said, her voice rough with sleep. She moved to Harrison's side as Arya carefully climbed onto her brother's bed. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did." Harrison handed her a coffee. black the way he remembered she liked it. We need to talk about everything. Claire wrapped her hands around the cup, breathing in the steam. Victoria? It got ugly before it got better, Harrison admitted quietly. She threatened to destroy my reputation if I didn't pay you off and keep the children's secret. When I refused, He paused, remembering Victoria's final expression. Not quite sadness, but something close. She chose to end it cleanly instead. She's calling her lawyer this morning to start divorce proceedings. Claire's eyes widened. Harrison, because of us. Because of choices I made. Harrison interrupted gently. Victoria and I were never in love, Claire. We were business partners who happened to be married. When she asked me to choose, it wasn't even a choice. It was just finally being honest about what our marriage actually was. Still, a divorce is the right thing for both of us. Harrison kept his voice low, aware of Arya trying to gently wake Tyler. She'll be fine. She's already planning her next empire, and I'll be. He looked at the children. I'll be learning how to be a father. Mama, Daddy brought pancakes. Arya's excited voice cut through their conversation. Tyler was awake now, looking confused but interested in the spread of food Harrison was unpacking. That's right, Claire said, her voice catching slightly on the word. She looked at Harrison, a question in her eyes. He nodded. Your daddy brought breakfast. Tyler's eyes went huge. Daddy? The simple question broke something open in Harrison's chest. This little boy with tousled brown hair and blue eyes, his son, looked at him with such pure hope and uncertainty. Harrison moved to the bedside and crouched down to Tyler's level. Hi, Tyler. I'm Harrison. He paused, feeling the weight of the words. I'm your father. Are you going to stay? Tyler asked, his voice small and scared. Or are you going to leave like the other daddies? Harrison glanced at Claire, who looked stricken. There were men at the shelter, she explained quietly. Some of them would play with the kids for a while, then disappear. Tyler got attached to one of them last year. It didn't end well. Rage flared in Harrison's gut, rage at a system that put children in situations where they learned not to trust, rage at himself for not being there, rage at the cruel randomness that had kept him from his children. But he pushed it down, focusing on the frightened little boy in front of him. I'm not going anywhere, Harrison said firmly. I'm your daddy, Tyler. That means I'm staying. Forever. Even when you get mad at me. Even when I make mistakes. Even when things are hard. I'm going to be here. Really truly, Tyler whispered. Really truly. Harrison smiled. In fact, I was thinking that after you get out of the hospital, maybe you and Arya and your mama would like to come stay somewhere more comfortable than the shelter. Somewhere with your own rooms and toys and books. Would you like that? Arya had been quietly listening, but now she spoke up. Like a real house? With bedrooms that stay ours? Like a real house, Harrison confirmed. We'll need to find the right one together, but yes. Claire's face had gone pale. Harrison, we can talk about the details later, Harrison said gently but firmly. Right now, let's have breakfast and let these kids eat something that isn't from a dumpster. The words came out harsher than he intended, but they had the desired effect. Claire's automatic protests died on her lips as she looked at their children, thin, worn, resilient in ways children shouldn't have to be. Okay, she said finally, but we are talking about this. Soon. Breakfast was chaotic and wonderful. Arya asked a million questions. What kind of house? Could they have a dog? Would there be a yard? Could her room be purple? Tyler was quieter, but ate with an enthusiasm that suggested he'd been hungry for a very long time. Claire picked at her food, her eyes constantly moving between Harrison and the children as if waiting for the dream to end. Harrison fielded questions while making mental notes. Purple bedroom for Arya. Dog, maybe after they settled in. Yard, definitely. Books, as many as they wanted. A safe neighborhood with good schools. Everything these children should have had from birth. A knock on the door interrupted the impromptu breakfast party. Dr. Santos entered, her expression professional but warm. Good morning, Morgan family. I see you have a visitor. "This is our daddy," Arya announced proudly. "He came back like he promised." Dr. Santos's eyes met Harrison's, and he saw the knowing look there. She'd suspected this yesterday. Now here he was, having breakfast with his newly discovered children, looking every inch the devoted father. "I have good news," Dr. Santos said. "Tyler's scans came back clear. No internal damage beyond the bruising and cracked ribs we already knew about. He can go home today with strict instructions for rest and follow-up appointments." "Home," Claire repeated quietly. "About that," Harrison said. "We're going to need those discharge papers sent to a new address." He pulled out his phone and opened a real estate app he'd been browsing since 4 a.m. "I've been looking at rental properties in good school districts. There's a house in Riverside Gardens available immediately. 4 bedrooms, fenced yard near Oakwood Elementary, which has excellent ratings." Claire stared at him. "Harrison, we can't afford." "I can." Harrison met her eyes. "Let me do this. Please. They're my children too, and I've missed 6 years of supporting them. Let me help." "It's not that simple." "It is that simple." Harrison's voice was steel wrapped in gentleness. "The shelter isn't safe. You know it isn't. Last week there was a fight that sent 2 people to the ER. Arya and Tyler shouldn't be living like that. Not when there's an alternative." Dr. Santos cleared her throat diplomatically. "Mrs. Morgan, as Tyler's physician, I would recommend a stable, safe environment for his recovery. Shelters can be breeding grounds for infections and stress that could complicate healing." Claire's resistance crumbled. Harrison saw the moment she let herself hope for something better, saw the way her shoulders sagged with relief, as if she'd been carrying a weight so long she'd forgotten how heavy it was. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, but we're setting ground rules. This isn't you taking over our lives, this is help. Temporary help until I can get back on my feet." "Of course," Harrison agreed, knowing that temporary was already a lie. He had no intention of letting them struggle alone ever again. But Claire needed to believe she still had control, still had dignity. He could let her have that. For now. The rest of the morning was a whirlwind of paperwork, discharge instructions, and arrangements. Harrison made phone calls, mobilized resources with the efficiency that had made him a business legend. By noon, Tyler was being wheeled out of the hospital with Arya skipping alongside, chattering about her future purple bedroom. Claire walked beside Harrison, quiet and overwhelmed. "This is really happening," she said as they reached the parking lot. "This is really happening," Harrison confirmed. He gestured to his town car. "My driver will take you to the house. I've had furniture delivered, basics for now, we can add more as needed. The fridge is stocked. There are clothes in the kids' sizes, toys, books, whatever I forgot we'll get." "You did all this in one morning?" Claire looked at him incredulously. "I made some calls." Harrison smiled slightly. "Being obscenely wealthy has its advantages. I don't want your money, Harrison. I know. But our children need food, shelter, stability. That's not about money, that's about being parents." He paused. "Besides, you can't work 3 jobs and take care of Tyler while he heals. Let me do this part. You've been strong enough for both of us for 6 years. It's my turn now." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to do this, how to trust this. Every time things get better, something goes wrong. I'm afraid to believe this is real." "It's real." Harrison wanted to pull her into his arms, but held back. They were still finding their way, still figuring out what they were to each other beyond co-parents. "I promise you, Claire, this is real and I'm not going anywhere. Mama, Daddy." "Tyler says his ribs hurt." Arya's voice called from the car where James was helping settle the children. "I'm coming, baby." Claire hurried toward the car, slipping immediately back into mother mode. Harrison watched her go, then felt his phone buzz continuously. Multiple texts from his assistant. Board meeting rescheduled for Monday. Patterson demanding explanation. "Your father called 3 times. Says it's urgent. Victoria's lawyer sent preliminary paperwork. Media already asking questions about your absence yesterday. The real world, pushing back in, demanding answers, requiring attention." Harrison looked at his children in the car, Tyler wincing but smiling, Arya holding his hand. Claire buckling them in with practiced efficiency. Everything in his old life was falling apart. His marriage, possibly his business relationships, certainly his reputation once word got out. And somehow, watching his family, Harrison couldn't bring himself to care. He climbed into the passenger seat and turned to look back at the children. "Ready to see your new house?" "Ready." Arya bounced in her seat. Tyler just grinned, still too sore to move much but clearly excited. As James pulled into traffic, Harrison caught Claire's eye in the rearview mirror. She mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Harrison nodded. But the truth was they had it backwards. These people, this woman who had survived impossible circumstances, these children who had learned resilience before they learned to spell. They were saving him. He just hoped he was strong enough to deserve it. 2 days later, Harrison sat in his office facing his father across the mahogany desk that had witnessed countless business battles. Richard Blackwell looked every inch the corporate titan he'd been for 40 years. Silver hair immaculately styled, suit custom-tailored, expression carved from granite. "You've lost your mind," Richard said without preamble. "Absolutely lost your mind." "Good morning to you too, Father." Harrison kept his voice neutral, though his hands clenched under the desk. "Don't be flippant. Do you have any idea what this is doing to the company? The board is in chaos. Our stock dropped 2 points when rumors started circulating about your personal situation. 2 points, Harrison. That's millions in shareholder value evaporating because you couldn't keep your illegitimate children quiet." "They're not illegitimate. They're mine." Harrison's voice hardened. "And I won't keep them quiet. I won't hide them or pretend they don't exist." "Then you're a fool." Richard leaned forward, his eyes cold. "I didn't build this empire so you could throw it away over some woman and her children. Pay her off, generously, set up a trust, but for God's sake, keep them out of your public life." "No." The single word hung in the air. Richard's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Harrison stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. "I'm done pretending that success means sacrificing everything that actually matters. I'm done measuring my worth in stock prices and board approvals. I'm done being the son you wanted instead of the father my children need. Your children," Richard spat the words like poison, "are the result of your carelessness. They are not your responsibility beyond financial support. They are my responsibility in every way that counts." Harrison turned to face his father. "And frankly, your opinion on fatherhood means less than nothing. You were never there. Not for me, not for my sisters. You chose work over family every single time. I won't make the same mistake." Richard's face flushed with anger. "I gave you everything. The best schools, the best opportunities, a company worth billions." "You gave me money," Harrison interrupted. "You gave me expectations and criticism and impossible standards. But you never gave me what those children need most. Presence, love, time." He paused. "I'm not you, Father. I refuse to be you. Then you'll fail." Richard stood, his voice shaking with rage. "Mark my words, Harrison. You'll lose everything. The board will force you out. Your reputation will be destroyed. And when that woman realizes you're not the golden ticket she thought you were, she'll leave with those children and you'll have nothing. If I lose everything except them, I'll still have more than you ever did." Harrison moved to the door and opened it. "This meeting is over. Please leave." Richard stared at him for a long moment, then grabbed his briefcase. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." "No," Harrison said quietly. "The biggest mistake of my life was listening to you for as long as I did." After his father left, Harrison sat alone in his office, his hands shaking with adrenaline. His phone buzzed with a call from Claire. "Harrison? Your father just showed up at the house." Ice flooded Harrison's veins. "What? Is he still there?" "No. He left after I told him to go to hell." Claire's voice was shaking but firm. "He offered me $2 million to take Arya and Tyler and leave the state. Said I was ruining your life. That I was a gold digger who got pregnant on purpose to trap you. Claire, I'm so sorry. He said you'd wake up one day and realize what you'd given up for us. That this domestic fantasy wouldn't last." Her voice cracked. Harrison, what if he's right? What if you do wake up and regret all of this? Listen to me very carefully, Harrison said, his voice fierce. My father is a bitter, lonely man who has spent his entire life valuing money over people. He's been married 4 times. His children can't stand to be in the same room with him. He measures worth in dollars and power, and he has no concept of what actually matters. Harrison took a breath. I will not become him, do you understand? I will never regret choosing you and our children over his approval. But your company is doing fine. Better than fine, actually. Harrison moved to his computer, pulling up the latest reports. We just secured that low-income housing development project I proposed. The board was skeptical at first, but the projections show sustainable profits while actually helping people. Patterson said it was the most inspired work I'd done in years. Really? Claire's voice held tentative hope. Really? Turns out when I'm not having a nervous breakdown over a loveless marriage and existential emptiness, I make better business decisions. Harrison smiled. Claire, my father showing up was his last desperate attempt at control. He has no power here. Not over me, not over you, not over our family. Our family, Claire repeated softly. That still sounds strange. It sounds perfect to me. Harrison paused. How are the kids? Aria wants to show you her room. She's been organizing her books by color. Tyler fell asleep on the couch watching cartoons. They're happy, Harrison. So happy it scares me. Why does it scare you? Because I keep waiting for it to end. For you to realize this is too hard, too complicated, too much. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm afraid to believe this is permanent. Then I'll believe for both of us until you can, Harrison said gently. I'm coming home early today. We'll have dinner together, all 4 of us, and you'll see that this isn't going anywhere. That I'm not going anywhere. Home, Claire said. You called the house home. It is home. The first real home I've had in years. Harrison felt the truth of it settle in his chest. I'll be there in an hour. When Harrison arrived at the Riverside Gardens house an hour later, he found Aria waiting by the window, her face lighting up the moment his car pulled into the driveway. Daddy's home, she shouted, running to the door. The words hit Harrison like a physical embrace. He scooped her up as she launched herself at him, spinning her around while she giggled. How's my girl? Harrison asked, setting her down. Perfect. Come see my room. I organized everything. Aria grabbed his hand, pulling him inside. Claire stood in the hallway, Tyler beside her looking sleepy but smiling. Harrison met her eyes over Aria's head and saw the fear beginning to ease, replaced by something that looked almost like hope. This was worth fighting for. Worth losing his father's approval, worth the board's skepticism, worth every complication and challenge. Because for the first time in his life, Harrison Blackwell knew what it felt like to actually be home. 3 years later, Aria stood in her school's auditorium, preparing to give the speech that would earn her the Young Scholars Award. She was 9 now, confident and brilliant, her green eyes scanning the crowd until they found what they were looking for. Front row, center, Harrison and Claire, with Tyler between them. Claire was 5 months pregnant, glowing and radiant in a way that made Harrison's heart skip every time he looked at her. Harrison held Tyler's hand while Tyler waved enthusiastically at his sister. This essay is about transformation, Aria began, her voice clear and strong. About how sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead to the best changes. About how a phone call to a wrong number can be a call to exactly the right person. About how family isn't always the people you're born with. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stay. Harrison felt Claire's hand find his, squeezing tight. 3 years ago, my brother and I were trapped, Aria continued. Not just by a hunting snare, but by poverty and fear and hunger. We didn't know how the story would end. We just knew we needed help. And then a man answered the phone. A stranger who became the best thing that ever happened to us. My daddy. Aria's eyes found Harrison's across the auditorium. He taught me that being a caterpillar isn't forever. That transformation is painful but possible. That love is the only thing powerful enough to change everything, and that sometimes wrong numbers lead us exactly where we're supposed to be. The applause was thunderous, but Harrison barely heard it. He was too busy watching his daughter, This brilliant, brave, beautiful child who had saved his life by being trapped in a forest and calling for help. That night, after dinner and homework and the usual evening chaos, Harrison found himself in Arya's purple bedroom for their nightly reading ritual. Tyler had already fallen asleep in his own room, exhausted from soccer practice. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" Arya set down her book, her expression unusually serious. "Of course, sweetheart. Anything. Are you happy?" She searched his face with those green eyes that mirrored his own. "Like, really truly happy? Not just saying it to make me feel better happy, but real happy?" Harrison thought about the question. 3 years ago, he'd been successful and miserable, living in a sterile penthouse with a woman he respected but didn't love, measuring his worth in profit margins and stock prices. Now he lived in a house that was always slightly messy, with children who asked impossible questions and a woman who challenged him daily to be better. His father had disowned him. Several board members had tried to force him out, unsuccessfully. The tabloids had had a field day with his secret family. His life had become infinitely more complicated, and yet, "I'm really truly happy," Harrison said honestly. "The happiest I've ever been." "Even though Grandpa Richard is mean and doesn't want to meet us?" Arya asked. "Even though people at your work were mad at first? Even though sometimes Tyler and I fight and Mama gets stressed and life is messy?" "Especially because of all that," Harrison said, pulling her close. "You want to know a secret? I used to think happiness meant everything being perfect and easy. No problems, no stress, no complications. But that's not happiness. That's just emptiness pretending to be peace." "Then what's real happiness?" Arya asked. Harrison thought carefully about his answer. "Real happiness is knowing that even when things are hard, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. It's loving people so much that their problems become your problems, and somehow that's okay. It's going to bed tired and waking up grateful. It's choosing the messy, complicated, beautiful chaos over the quiet, empty alternative." Arya nodded slowly, processing this. "So you don't regret anything? Not even the hard parts?" "Not for a single second." Harrison kissed the top of her head. "You, Tyler, your mama, the baby coming, you're my real life. Everything before was just rehearsal." "I like that," Arya said, snuggling closer. "We're your real life." After Arya fell asleep, Harrison found Claire in their bedroom. Not the sterile penthouse master suite he'd once had, but a warm, lived-in space with mismatched furniture they'd picked out together and photos covering every surface. Claire sat on the bed, one hand resting on her rounded belly, looking at a photo from last week, all 4 of them at the park, wind-blown and laughing, Tyler on Harrison's shoulders, and Arya holding Claire's hand. "She asked me if I was happy," Harrison said, sitting beside her. "Are you?" Claire looked up at him. Even after 3 years of being together, she still sometimes asked the question like she expected him to say no. Instead of answering with words, Harrison cupped her face and kissed her, slow and deep, pouring 3 years of gratitude and love and absolute certainty into that single gesture. When they broke apart, Claire was crying. Happy tears this time, not the fearful ones that had plagued their early days. "I love you," Harrison said. "I loved you 7 years ago when I was too stupid to recognize it. I loved you 4 years ago when I saw you again and still walked away. And I love you now, messy and complicated and perfect exactly as we are." "I love you too," Claire whispered. "I'm still scared sometimes that I'll wake up and this will all be gone, but I'm working on it. Take your time. I'll still be here when you're ready to fully believe it." Harrison's hand joined hers on her belly, feeling their daughter kick against his palm. "We'll all still be here." They sat together in comfortable silence, 2 people who had found each other through impossible circumstances, built a family from chaos, and somehow created something that felt like grace. Downstairs, Arya's award sat on the mantel beside Tyler's soccer trophy and the ultrasound photo of baby Hope, Ibby. Upstairs, 2 children slept peacefully in rooms that would always be theirs. And here, in the space between, 2 parents planned for a future that looked nothing like Harrison had imagined his life would be. It was better. So much better. The next morning, Harrison woke to the sounds of his family stirring. Tyler's footsteps thundering down the stairs, Arya's voice calling that breakfast was ready, She'd been learning to cook simple meals, Claire's laugh floating up from the kitchen. He lay in bed for just a moment, savoring the beautiful chaos of it all. Then his phone rang with a call from Margaret, his assistant. "Morning, boss. Board meeting in an hour. We're finalizing the contract for the Oakland Affordable Housing Project. This one's going to be huge. Patterson wants to expand the model to 5 more cities." "Tell him 6, Harrison said, already getting dressed. "If we're going to do this, we do it right." 6 cities it is. Oh, and that reporter from Business Weekly wants to interview you about the company's new direction. Something about corporate responsibility and family values?" Harrison smiled. 3 years ago, that interview would have been a disaster. Now he had something worth talking about. "Schedule it. But not this weekend. Tyler has a soccer game and Aria has a science fair." "Noted. Soccer and science fair take priority." Margaret's voice held warmth. She'd been skeptical of Harrison's new life at first, but had slowly become one of his family's biggest champions. "See you in an hour." Harrison headed downstairs to find organized chaos. Tyler had spilled orange juice. Aria was trying to make scrambled eggs that were decidedly not scrambled enough, and Claire was attempting to salvage breakfast while also dealing with morning sickness. "Need backup?" Harrison asked from the doorway. 3 faces turned to him with identical expressions of relief. "Daddy, I made eggs, but they're still jiggly," Aria announced. "Tyler dumped juice everywhere." Tyler reported cheerfully, apparently unconcerned about his role in the crisis. "Save me," Claire mouthed, looking slightly green. Harrison rolled up his sleeves and waded into the beautiful disaster that was his morning. He salvaged the eggs, cleaned up the juice, got Tyler dressed for school, helped Aria pack her lunch, and made sure Claire ate something that wouldn't trigger her nausea. This was his life now. No penthouse peace, no sterile silence, no measured perfection. Just love and laughter and sticky countertops and absolute contentment. As he drove to work an hour later, his phone buzzed with a text from Aria. "Thanks for fixing my eggs, Daddy. You're the best. Love you really truly." Harrison smiled and typed back, "Love you really truly, too. Always." At the board meeting, Patterson presented the housing project results with obvious pride. "Since implementing Blackwell's model 3 years ago, we've built 847 units of quality affordable housing, maintained 12% profit margins, and received recognition from urban development organizations across the country." Harrison, this initiative has transformed not just the company's reputation but our entire operational philosophy. The board members nodded in approval, even the ones who had initially resisted Harrison's new direction. "Gentlemen," Harrison said, standing to address the room, 3 years ago I told you I was making changes. Not just in the company, but in what we value and how we measure success. Some of you thought I was having a breakdown. A few tried to force me out. Several board members had the grace to look uncomfortable. But here's what I learned. When you build a company that actually values people, not just as consumers or profit sources, but as human beings deserving of dignity, you don't just make money. You make meaning. And meaning drives loyalty, innovation, and sustainable growth in ways that pure profit motive never could. "Well said," Patterson agreed. "So what's next?" Harrison smiled. "Next we expand. 6 more cities as discussed. But I also want to add a new initiative. Workforce housing specifically for single parents. Affordable units with on-site childcare, community spaces, and access to job training programs." "That's ambitious," one board member said carefully. "The margins." "We'll be fine," Harrison interrupted. "Better than fine, because we're not just building housing. We're building futures. And that kind of investment always pays off." The board approved the proposal unanimously. As Harrison left the building that afternoon, his phone rang. It was his ex-wife Victoria calling for the first time in almost 2 years. "Victoria," Harrison answered, surprised. "Harrison, I hope this isn't a bad time." Her voice was warmer than he remembered it ever being during their marriage. "Not at all. How are you? How's London?" "London is brilliant. The firm is thriving. I'm thriving." She paused. "I saw the article about your housing projects, and the interview where you talked about your family. It was Nice, Harrison. You seem genuinely happy. I am, Harrison said simply. Really happy. Good, that's good. Victoria sounded like she meant it. I called because I wanted to apologize. For how I handled things when you told me about the children. I was cruel. Threatened you, I'm not proud of that. We were both doing the best we could in an impossible situation, Harrison said generously. You don't owe me an apology. Maybe not, but I'm giving you one anyway. Victoria took a breath. The truth is, seeing you happy made me realize I wasn't. Not really. I was successful and respected and utterly empty, so I made some changes. Started dating someone who actually makes me laugh. Took up painting. Stopped measuring my worth entirely in profit margins. She laughed. You inspired me, Harrison, in the weirdest possible way. I'm glad, Harrison said, meaning it. You deserve to be happy too. We both do, which is why I called. I'm getting remarried next spring. To someone wonderful who wants the same child-free, career-focused life I do. I'd like to send you an invitation. Not because I expect you to come, but because I want you to know there are no hard feelings. We were wrong for each other, but we were both doing our best. I'd be honored to receive an invitation, Harrison said. And congratulations, Victoria. Truly. After they hung up, Harrison sat in his car for a moment, marveling at how life had worked out. 3 years ago, his divorce had felt like failure. Now it felt like freedom, for both of them. His phone buzzed with a photo from Claire. All 3 kids, Aria, Tyler, and 2-month-old Hope, napping together on the couch in a tangle of limbs and blankets. Your family is perfect, Claire's text read. Come home soon. Harrison looked at the photo, his children, his beautiful children, and felt his throat tighten with emotion. He typed back, on my way, love you really truly. Then he started the car and headed toward home. Not the empty penthouse of his past, but the lived-in house full of laughter and chaos and love. Toward the life he'd stumbled into through a wrong-number phone call and a child's desperate plea. Toward the family that had transformed him from a successful shell of a man into someone who finally understood what actually mattered. As Harrison pulled into the driveway, Aria burst out the front door, Tyler right behind her, both of them running toward him with open arms. Daddy's home, they shouted in unison. Harrison caught them both, one in each arm, and felt a surge of gratitude so powerful it almost knocked him over. This was everything. And he would never, ever take it for granted. Inside, Claire waited with Hope in her arms, smiling at the reunion. Harrison kissed her, then the baby, then herded his family inside where dinner was waiting and homework needed finishing and bedtime routines needed starting, where life was messy and beautiful and exactly as it should be. That night, tucked into her purple bedroom with stars glowing on the ceiling, Aria asked Harrison to tell her the story again. Which story? Harrison asked, though he already knew. The day you found us, Aria said, snuggling under her covers. Tell me about the phone call. So Harrison did, as he had countless times before. He told her about the desperate call from a wrong number, about a little girl brave enough to ask for help, about driving through the city with his heart pounding, not knowing his whole life was about to change, about finding 2 children in a forest who would become his entire world. And they lived happily ever after? Aria prompted sleepily. Not happily ever after, Harrison corrected gently as he always did. Happily ever forward, choosing each other, choosing love, choosing to be a family every single day. I like that better, Aria mumbled, her eyes already closing. Happily ever forward. Happily ever forward, Harrison agreed, kissing her forehead. He turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his daughter sleep. Then he walked down the hall to check on Tyler, asleep with his soccer ball. Then to the nursery, where Hope slept in her crib, tiny fists curled, dreaming baby dreams. And finally to his bedroom where Claire waited. Good day? She asked as he climbed into bed beside her. Perfect day, Harrison said, pulling her close. Every day with you is perfect. Even the chaotic ones where nothing goes right? Especially those ones. Harrison kissed her temple. Those are the days I know I'm alive. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, 3 children sleeping down the hall, a future full of possibility stretching ahead. And somewhere in the universe, whatever force had connected a desperate child's call to exactly the right person smiled, knowing that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with wrong numbers that lead to exactly right places.